Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. Let's see what we have today. Well, thank you all for joining me for another great episode of the Write Project podcast. I know that I say they are all wonderful, but this one really is. I am on the line with Prajwala Dixit, one of the authors with us now, the wonderful collection from Breakwater Books with tons of great authors in it. Dixit wrote the story Andu Nanapu, one of the great stories from it, and she was also the winner of the Arts and Letters 2020 award from Arts NL. Anyway, we are very honored to have her on the line. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. This is a pleasure, honor, and delight. Thank you.
Those are all lies. Those are all horrible, horrible lies. This is being
Don't
recorded
call me a liar on air. That's not fair.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. And then I'm the liar. Yeah. But this is a wonderful. This is being recorded on August 19th, which is my birthday. This is the most hated day of the year, but you made it a little bit better.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh no. That's copyrighted. We'll get sued. No, I'm joking. Wonderful. Okay. Tell me a little bit about your story from I've read it. It's wonderful. It's very touching. But you tell me a little bit about like your story from us now, from your point of view, because no one ever has the same exact read as the author, you know?
Yeah, no, but before I do that, I'd be curious to hear what you thought of the story, what you made of it.
I really liked it. It was really like it was really universal to me. Like it's one of those stories where it's like it was told so well because you can get themes that they're applicable to a lot of people, you know what I mean? Like it's like, and that's a lot of the stories in here. I actually had questions about that I asked some of the other authors about, because like I wondered how much of that was in the edit or what happened there, you know what I mean? But like I don't know. I felt myself being, I don't know, it was the only one that kind of made me a bit sad a little bit. Like
I also wonder, because this is the same piece I submitted for Arts and Letters.
Yeah.
And a modified version of it is what got published in Us Now. Without having the other stories, do you remember thinking about do you remember what you felt when you read my piece?
Yeah, no, when I read it the first time years back, because I've read it again for this, I remember being very like, it's just sad that it's rough to know that some problems are universal. You know what I mean? Like it's so much in collections like this. You go in almost, if you're a well-read person, you go in hoping to find like things that we all find universal. Like in Xavier's, it's a lot about like, you know, young love and stuff like that, and dealing with coming out and that kind of material. And in some ways that's universal. Like those feelings are universal to that culture kind of thing. It's so going into Us Now, when I was sent it by Breakwater, I very much like went in like both with two sets of minds. I went in wanting to see what's different and learn about other people and other cultures and stuff like that, other experiences. That's why I like to read. But also you always kind of be like, in what ways are we the same? You know what I mean? And exploring our differences, we also get to explore how we're the same. Some of the stuff that the character in this deal with, like you know, like some of the stuff I guess most women deal with, it's genuinely frustrating to know that that's a universal problem. You know what I mean? Like of all the things for humanity to be aligned on, why does it have to be that, you know?
True that. Thank you for all of those things, wonderful things that you said, and what a pertinent and almost perfect observation of the not just my story but all the stories that are in the collection. I've forgotten your question. I'm guessing you wanted me to tell you.
From your what's the story about from your perspective, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
right. The story is rooted in a true event,
Oh,
but fictionalized around it, if you may.
yeah.
And it jumps space and time because it's looking at the story of a goddess of someone who is revered and has enormous power, even if you may, and the path she's been the trials she faces on her path, in having to um, prove her truth. Let's put it that way, without giving away what she's made to do.
Sure.
Juxtaposed with an 8 to 10 year old's voice of a day in at a really packed bus station in Bangalore, India. And what's common to both the narratives is exactly what you said, the universality of how women are treated, regardless of age, power, gender, class. Of course, those that live at the intersections are impacted even more. But that's a universal truth of women continuing to be subjected to oppression and oppressive ways. So I think that's what the story speaks to. What the story really did to me, on a personal level, is allowed me to revisit my own trauma, and sort of come to terms with what had happened in a creative way, and tie a nice little bow on it, and say, okay, this is what happened, and this is how you felt about it then, this is how you feel about it now. Yeah, I did visit the bus station when I was in India, this just a couple months ago, and I stood in the same spot where the incident took place. And even talking about it now, it brings tears to my eyes.
I'm sorry.
And I bawled. I really cried. And the passers-by, they were kind. They were like wondering what had happened and offering me water. Um, but somewhere down there, the child in me healed. Let's put
That's
it
good.
that way. So yeah, that's from my perspective, if you may.
That's great. Well, that's great and
I,
bad.
I
You don't
know
know.
what
You don't
you.
know what to say. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
writing about trauma in general, without going into it? So I've worked with someone in the past who was writing about a woman who was writing about a very similar situation. Not exactly the same. No two situations are exactly the same. Aside from, again, the sad universality of it, very different. Um, and she was working on writing this memoir, but she was also working with a therapist at the time to recontextualize stuff. And the therapist was encouraging her to basically go back and visit those memories, but to alter them, to be like, you have control of them. And I don't know how common this is, if this is a tool that all therapists use or just this therapist, but like, and like basically she would take her younger self out of the situation in the memory. Like her older self would like take her by the hand or pretend to, or you know what I mean, and remove her from whatever situation she was in that was causing the trauma. um and it occurred to me when I was working with her, write that into the stories, like write this, because she was having trouble writing the actual events, and it's like, well, write it both ways. um and she found that, like, um story sto- not fictionalizing, but like storifying, that's not a word, but like turning the events into story was helpful, because I
Yeah,
find that.
no, I hear you there. I don't know what your question's going to be, but I just wanted to add that I don't know if you've seen kids play. They self talk a lot. They imagine play a lot,
Yeah.
and they have maybe two dolls or two figurines or whatever, or maybe even two spatulas for all we care, right?
Yep.
And one is doing something and the other one's doing something else, and that's how they process.
Yeah.
I think as we grow older, I don't know if every one of us learns the best way or has the means to learn the best way, the circumstances to learn the best way to cope with everything that goes on with us on an everyday life. We're stimulated so much, right? I mean, as a child, you are, and that's how they find ways to express what's going on with them. I found that, and this happened through serendipity. This wasn't through therapy or any such sort of means. I
Sure.
now, when I look back at my writing, I can tell that that's me also play acting things so that I am just like a 4 or 5 year old would, just so that I'm able to soothe myself as well as soothe my inner child, as well as come to terms with, accept, and then move ahead with life, right?
Good.
Otherwise, when I wrote this at that point, I didn't know what I was doing. Now, when I look back, where I've been on my mental health journey as well, I'm able to clearly articulate and say, okay, this is what I was trying to do. Why that particular story? Why that particular goddess's story, even, and the comparison. So I'm able to see that now. I don't know if that's
Excellent.
a question.
No, yeah, for sure. And that pretty much answers it. But the few times in my life that I've had what I can only call PTSD, you know what I mean? Like something strange happens, and then like I'm a very like thought process wise, I'm a very analytical person. So like I think of everything as boxes in my head kind of thing. And when this thing happened, and it wasn't the same as what you went through, but when this thing happened, I felt like it was just floating on the surface and there was no box to put it in. And it just stayed on my mind forever because there was no category to put it into.
Right.
It was just a bad car crash. It wasn't anything on that level kind of thing. But it wasn't until I could make it into a story and basically create a conclusion for it and create a box for it that it finally went away. So I guess the question is, and you kind of already answered it, but do you feel like telling it and making it into a story and because story is different than reality, and that has a beginning, middle, and an end. You know what I mean? Do you find
Right.
that making it into a story is something helpful?
I I I am learning it as one of the tools, one of, not the only.
For
Uh,
sure.
but and to each their own. I mean, to some, writing works, to some talking about it works, to some painting, embroidering. There's so many different ways to express it, right? Maybe just going up on the rooftop and yelling, maybe that works for someone, right? Who knows?
That sounds like fun.
Um, yeah, all I know now is that it is a means, and I have that at my disposal. Not every story I write comes from that space.
Good.
Some do, some don't. This particular one did. So,
Yes.
and I'm so glad we're talking about mental health and trauma and its impact in the writing world. I think mental health touches each and every person so uniquely, depending on their situation, their color, gender, race, sexual orientation, abilities, size, so many ways to quantify how it impacts each one of us. So I'm glad that I have this tool.
No, and the more tools you have, the better. I have a wonderful tool. Like I'm never shy talking about. We all have our own baggage. You know what I mean? I have my own mental health issues that I have. One of the tools I use are lovely pills prescribed by my doctor, and I don't like them, but I like it better than when I don't have them. So
That's true.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not fun, but they're better than not having them. But I'm aware that like on some ways that's a giant privilege. Not only that I, thank through the White Writers Alliance have health coverage and stuff like that, but also just like I am the demographic that if I go to the doctor and say I'm having trouble, I am the most believed. You know what I mean? And it goes downhill from there to like You know what I mean, I'm assuming.
I do. Unfortunately, I do.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the story in there somewhere someday too. So
Yeah.
no, I don't know where you stand, but one of I was listening to this Indian artist speak about, and he was an actor, and he spoke about how his tank of angst needs to be filled for him to be able to create. So I don't know if it's the healthiest to draw from these or not. That's a whole other debate and question in terms of story, but in terms of making sure your health is up top. But I know that for many it becomes a source because that's the most eminent thing your prefrontal cortex is thinking about, right? So I think so. It's just interesting the phrase he used as well, tank of angst. So and we all have those tanks, and there are different capacities, and so I've wondered how it impacts writers. So
That's interesting. I wonder if that's why some successful writers turn to substance abuse and stuff like that. Like there is a bit of like some writers, even with a tiny modicum of success, like tend to self-destruct. Not a lot, but enough that people know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
right,
So I
right.
wonder if like I don't tend to draw from the tank of angst. I definitely used to, but like I most of my stuff's fantastical. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
crime fiction. So it can be
Yeah.
very fictional. I'm actually writing my first thing based on my own life right now, so that'll turn out badly. But yeah,
Ah.
no, it's gonna be so bad. It's gonna make so many people angry. My going phrase going in is, if you wanted to be better in this book, you should have been nicer to me in person. Not my fault. You're coming off like a butthole.
Hilarious.
Um, yeah, but I don't know. I could see if you were like a writer who looked like me that didn't actually have that many problems and wrote about all their problems and became wonderful, need a new book and ran out of problems, then drinks their way into
Right.
more problems. Yay, divorce. You know what I mean? My kids have left me. New book. Horrible. I might be a bad person. I might be a bad person.
The title of your book, I Might Be a Bad Person.
No, the title of my book is Newfoundland Literary Fiction,
I
with the quotes.
I was joking there. I don't think the title of your book should be I Am a Bad Person or whatever.
No, you know what? There's worse titles. There's worse. It's that's we'll save that for the memoir.
Fair.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Can I ask about your other projects, if that's allowed?
Yeah,
I,
sure.
I
What
have been crossing my fingers, wondering if Divya's for Diversity will ever return, or if in a post-pandemic world.
DS for Diversity has returned. I did run another successful campaign this year, and we've raised over $1,000 already.
Awesome.
The goal was 500, so and that was within I think 2 or 3 weeks of it going online. So the focus this year is neurodiversity and
So mental health, I assume. Yeah. Okay.
resources towards mental health and wellness within our public libraries. And the focus comes from, of course, my own lived experience. And the fact that I had the privilege to lean on so many resources that people might not have access or privilege to. So to make those things more accessible in our province, not that there aren't wonderful people working on wonderful different things in mental health. That's one thing. I have a few projects. Actually, I finished a few projects in terms of playwriting, and I worked with a Nova Scotia company called Eastern Front Theatre, and created art with theater artists in India and theater artists in Canada. So brought my two worlds together. And most recently, I had my work commissioned and produced by Persistence Theatre, and it was called Pratidwani, which means an echo. and it fell under their larger umbrella of Ladies Reading Room project, which commemorates the women getting the right to vote in Newfoundland and Labrador, 100 years of women getting the right to vote.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have a couple projects on the go more for playwriting and one project in doc filmmaking. So I'm happily creating as I go along. Knock on wood.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love
Yeah,
Persistence Theater. They do
yeah,
amazing work over
they
there.
do. They
Yeah,
do. They do. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
And I have to just put a plug in here. My children's book is coming out, and I'm hoping I'll be back here talking with you about it in next year.
I would love that.
It's with Breakwater again. So
Nice. Good for them. Awesome. That's wonderful. They do some of the best children's books in the province. They're
they
just
do. They
really good
do.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Josh Gowdy's work, but I'm kind of biased
Oh
there. We
yeah.
we stole him for Terra Nova for his, so I gotta plug all the authors that we share. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah,
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 he's incredible.
yeah. Wonderful. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Um, that's great with the with everything. It's so great to see you doing well, and like we always kind of were like, ooh, she's a good writer. This is gonna be cool, kind of thing. Yeah, it's cool to see
Yeah.
other people kind of noticing, because it's super fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really honored and thrilled to be a part of Us Now, and
Yeah,
grateful to Lisa Moore Ramsey, the Department of English at Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Office of Immigration and Multiculturalism. Breakwater Books, of course, Rebecca Rose and her amazing team for this opportunity. It's been fantastic, and my fellow writers, such incredible work, and such an honor, privilege, and delight to be listed as one of those writers on the cover page. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's a great collection. They're beautiful, and it's heartwarming, and it's sad, and it's tragic, and there's just a lot there. You know what I mean? Can I actually ask something that was kind of inspired by the one of the other people that
sure.
was on the class? Um, Suho, when she was on here, we were talking about I can't remember how we got on the subject, but she was talking about meeting the other people who were working on Us Now in the writing group, and specifically this kind of shared experience of being, I don't think she used this word, of but like of being other, you know what I mean? And the stuff that, like, when you're out talking to fellow like Newfoundlanders or your fellow Newfoundlanders or whatever, you have to like explain. And there's so much that, like, with this group you didn't have to explain, and just the feeling of connection of like, oh, you know what it feels like to be in X situation or Y situation or whatever. Did you find that to be true as well? The whole, like, that kind of situation?
Absolutely. Definitely the emotional labor involved in putting forth my experience was definitely it was very different, and I echo Sue Howe's experience in that sense. But also, what was interesting is you we're not a monolith, and
No.
that's what the book explain. I mean, is explains how diverse the voices are, and that was fantastic because I could tap into hearing Xavier's story growing up in Jamaica, if I'm right,
Yep.
and Sobia Sheikh's in rooted in a Pakistan Canadian context, Pakistani Canadian context, and then Aisha and Turk taking us to Turkey and the flavors there, the milieu there. So it was as the introduction says, we roved as we wrote,
Yep.
because yes, there was that universality of, oh, this is what is happening to me in the larger scale, from the if we look at it from whiteness being the base, But then if we don't look at it from whiteness being the base, we had an incredible learning experience of culture, of language, of experience rooted in those spaces. And then it became, as you said, looking at what's similar and what's different. What's the human experience is the common denominator in all these stories, right? So yeah,
I like
yeah.
that. I'm not sure if I expressed that correctly. I'm very warm. It's too warm here, but I'm like, that was a good answer. Yeah, I was like, I feel like I said all that wrong, but okay, go.
No, no, you didn't. You didn't say
Okay.
anything wrong there. Everything was
Oh,
right, but I contextualized it from looking
beautiful.
at it from a non-white perspective as well.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure. It must be so nice because like I can complain about, say, like if I'm in a group of people, I've this has happened with my other, let's say, friends from away, let's say, kind of thing, where it's like if I'm in a group of people, I'm allowed to complain about Canada, like if I want this law changed or stuff like that. All my friends from away have to basically look around and say like, well, I love Canada, but
yeah,
and then go
yeah,
into complaint.
absolutely.
But like you have to start by reaffirming, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Uh, it's I've always expressed how this has worked for me in terms of looking at someone entering a new home, either by choice or by circumstance. And the door is open, obviously, for you to enter, and only then you enter. You're not breaking the doors and entering. And at first, you feel like you're a guest in that home. Everything you treat the space like you would if you were a guest in that home, and over time you start living there and it becomes your home. And that switch happens organically. There is I can't pinpoint a time when it happened to me. And when it is your home, as anyone's it would be, we're all on stolen lands, we all know that.
Yep.
You want to point out and say, oh, perhaps that picture is has been crooked for like 40 years. Maybe we can fix it and make it right. And perhaps that roof is leaking and the roof could collapse on our head. Let's make sure that's maybe this house is not working for all of us. Maybe we renovate, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and maybe while we're at it, maybe we don't just repair what's broken. Maybe we add on a wing. That'd be nice, right? We could expand.
right. So there's so many different ways of looking at that. But I think what happens often is that when someone new is in that space, new is relative.
Very.
I've been here 11 years, and some people still consider me a new person to this community, and I could be. I haven't lived my entire life here, so if I compare myself to them, of course I'm new. But then you're also not new because you've lived in that space and you know how it functions. So there's always that expectation almost of, do acknowledge that we've opened the door for you, and that make sure to say that you love this place, and only then explain what you don't like about it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if I were born here, I think I would do it in a more brash manner, if I can. Not that people go about doing it in a brash manner,
No, I'm
but I
pretty
think I
brash.
would be more. No, that's not what I was saying.
No, it's okay. You can say that.
Don't personalize everything. Everything's not about you.
No, I'm a liar and I'm
Uh,
brash. No,
oh my goodness, Jesus!
I'm also that. No, I'm
And it's
joking.
your birthday. And it's your birthday. Look at what we're doing.
I know it's wonderful.
Oh, but I would be more upfront, I guess. Now I think I'm expected to, and I've also, because of uh, because behavior is sort of driven through stimulus as well. So I have, I know I parse myself and depending on the company I am in, choose my words very carefully as to
Mm.
what I want to say about the place I call home. And yeah, that's there. That's very much there.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.